So this is our agenda, from internal projects to customer projects. This move, this trend that I think can be seen in our business. And to be very accurate, we need to say, before we stepped into the Corona crisis, I have zero idea what it will mean for what we talk about here, what it will mean for these trends and tendencies for the near future, for the far future. Very, very hard to predict at the moment what will happen here. So what we're talking about is the trend of the last couple of years until, say, February this year. And hopefully, when this crisis will be over, I think it will go on like that again. And it may go faster than the trend. It may get slower again. We will see it. I'd like to introduce you to a nice lady here. Her name is Clara Loft, and she is a perfectly normal project manager. She tells us she knows the value of her work, and maybe that's no more quite normal, because I know a lot of project managers who can't really say what the value of their work is. They know they have work for their organizations, but some of them are not fully aware of that. So what is she doing? She successfully manages internal projects for her employer. This includes a lot of things like implementing strategic initiatives, bringing change to an organization, developing new products and services for this organization, building teams across the organization, all these great, big, shiny things that internal project managers are doing. And one of the most important things, of course, she delivers on time. So maybe she is not that normal as a project manager. She has a specialty as an internal project manager. She knows how to do cross-functional project management. What does it mean, cross-functional project management? I have an example here of a division inside an organization. The division has a division manager. The division manager has department managers. And in these departments, simple example, we see between 3 and 6 employees working. Line organization, or a part inside a line organization. We often find that the influence, the power of a department manager depends on the number of employees. The more headcount they have, the more span of control they have, the more influential they are, the more important they are inside the organization. They know better, they hear earlier when some rumors go around in the organization. And it's also much easier to place rumors and to spread rumors in the organization because they have lots of employees who can just spread this in the first questions that the person will hear is, what was your span of control? And the next question may well be, what was your budget in your department? And again, budget depends very much on the size, on the headcount of the department. So there are many organizations where size of a department matters very much to the people who run these departments, and it's important for them. This has an interesting side effect. If project managers, maybe only for a limited period of time, need employees out of a department, for a department manager, the first perception will be, I'm losing influence, I'm losing control, I'm losing power, I'm losing importance inside the organization. In a line organization, it is important to have people under control. And now what we find in here is a project that runs across this line organization. It is cross-functional, and project managers, for a period of time, maybe temporarily, need people from these departments to do this cross-functional project. For department managers, this is a situation they mostly dislike. There may be some influences which can help the project manager to gain these people here. Things like internal charge systems and corporate strategies and corporate policies and so on. But in essence, many project managers find themselves in a very weak position in here. What they find is it's getting very hard often to get people out of the line organization, even temporarily for the project. The line managers are too powerful for that. They also find that when they have people booked for the project, when they have agreements made that they will have people out of the line organization temporarily for the project, these bookings, these agreements are not really reliable. Often they find that the people they expect to work for them in the end do something different. So that's a situation in which line managers are often stronger and project managers are mostly weaker. And that's the reason why we tend to call this a weak matrix. Weak from the point of view of the project manager. Weak matrix says a project manager is often more in the role of a project coordinator. I found all around the world this term being used for project managers in a very weak position. The project manager, project management team do often very large projects, still part-time. I had an example recently from a chemical company, a project manager who has to do projects at 30, 40 million euros part-time. The project manager is not fully assigned to the project, but has to do a lot of other things at the same time. And it's very hard to be successful with the project. Often in a weak matrix, project managers don't have an own budget. The budget is with the functional managers. Project managers are expected to do HR management and time management and task management and all these things, but not cost management and not budget management. Also, staffing, procurement in a weak matrix is commonly not done by project managers. It's done by people from the functional organization. They have departments for that, and the project manager must take the people, the contractors, and so on, that the functional organization is giving to them. Resource availability, not only people, also other things, rooms, equipment, whatever they need. The availability is low, and when agreements have been made, it's often very unreliable that they really will get it at the time they need it. And what I sometimes see is that this has an effect on the reputation of project managers. The reputation gets rather poor because it's hard in such a situation to meet deadlines, to deliver what is expected, and to meet all the other goals that are so important in projects. Sometimes, instead of a weak matrix, we find a strong matrix. One reason for that is actually customer projects, and we will talk about that in some minutes. There, the project manager is really called the project manager, sometimes even program manager, just meaning a very important project manager, very big, very powerful project manager. Availability of the project manager and a project management team is typically full-time in a strong matrix. The project is so important that you don't want a project manager to do it part-time. In a customer project, it means that's where the company earns money. Project managers have their own budget. Again, in a customer project, that's a very simple thing. The customer will pay us, say, $10 million. We want to have $2.5 million as a profit. So the remaining $7.5 million are the budget for the project manager. Project managers often do their staffing, procurement, everything by themselves, or they have people working for them, just working for them, working under them, doing that, because you don't want to have the wrong people. You want to have the right people in the project, and the project manager knows who that is. Resource availability is much higher and much more reliable, and this helps for the reputation of the project manager to increase it. By the way, sometimes we have a balanced matrix, weak and strong matrix, balanced out. I found it's very rare. I think it's the optimum situation that you can have. But as I said, it's very rare. Internal projects are mostly, not all, there are exceptions to that, but mostly weak matrix projects. Customer projects, again, there are exceptions, but the majority is in a strong matrix. It has powerful project managers because the project managers bring the money home in the organization. The weak matrix project, the internal project here, is rather a cost center. The customer project is the profit center. The profit depends on the work of the project manager. Our lady, Clara Loft, is in a weak matrix environment, and she has learned very well how to swim like a fish in the water in a weak matrix environment. She knows things like stakeholder orientation and servant leadership, persuasiveness. She has a lot of social skills. She has a lot of self-control. All the things that we need to be successful in a weak matrix. She knows how to do that. And if you look at organizations like PMI, IPMA, some others, when they talk about project management, that's the world that they describe. If you look into the PMBOK guide, that's the world the PMBOK guide is describing. The PMBOK guide is almost completely unaware that there is a second world of project management. Things changed. Clara Loft got fired one day to the next. And the reason is the company made the decision, we will not do this project anymore by ourselves. This project will be outsourced to an external provider, and she is no more needed. All her skills, knowledge, behavior, interpersonal competency, professionalism is no more needed, and she is made redundant. She says, this is happening not only to me, this is obviously also happening to others. More project managers are hired today for customer projects than for internal projects. Can it be so difficult to work in a customer project? But what we saw is there is a tendency for cross-corporate projects, for doing projects not just cross-functional, but cross-corporate. And this is precisely what our lady, what Clara wanted to do. Now, she said, whenever buyer is chosen, a customer project is created for a contractor. This is something I can do. These projects are no more just cost centers, they are profit centers. So project managers in customer projects take over responsibility for the income of the organization, for the profit that it finally makes. Clara found a new employer some weeks ago. I have to say that unfortunately, it wasn't that difficult. A lot of project managers were sick for customer projects, and that's what she does. And the first thing she notices is now she has two areas of responsibility. Of course, she has to make the customer happy and satisfied, but she also has to take care for her own employer, because the employer also has expectations on her. The first one, of course, being profitability. A second one, by the way, liquidity. And the third is, again, the happy customer. She found disputes happening, and there are various reasons why there are disputes between the companies, commercial interests, national corporate cultures, and many more things. And she found she has to bridge differences that she did not have to bridge in internal projects. We will be back on that topic in some minutes. Another thing she found out was that she had to deal with legal terms now, with terminology that she did not understand. I have some examples in here, and these are just some few examples of a big number of terms that she has to learn now. And by the way, if you look at national law and national contract law and different industries, construction, software, automotive, wherever you are, you will find a lot of very specific terms there as well, and acronyms there as well that are not used somewhere else. So she was a bit overwhelmed by the new knowledge that she needed to learn, for which she was not prepared. And maybe the worst of all, which she was not prepared for, it's contracting. Contracting means there's always a worst case scenario waiting for you, and that's a lawsuit. That's a project that ends at court. It may be the worst case scenario, but it happens, and it doesn't happen that rarely, which means failure is no more just an internal thing. Failure is now in the public realm. Other people will learn from that because courts are having their sessions publicly. She tells her boss, if you want me to bring money home with projects, we need to talk about a solution. I am not sufficiently prepared for that. There are very specific challenges for that, and I'd like to talk about that more than we can. There are more challenges than what we can discuss in 2 hours, but some of the most important challenges. First of all, it is a fast-growing business. I made 3 surveys, one in 2015, one in 2018, 2019, something we could call a longitudinal study. Yeah, and over time, went back a bit in 2019, but generally over time, you see the red bar is the growing bar, the blue bar is getting shorter, at least not getting longer between 2018 2019. I believe what it says is it's a growing discipline doing customer projects. And if you look at the other survey where we looked at organizations and make or buy decisions, it is in essence the same story. Here we see the story from the contractor side, the red bars from the project manager side here. The other story was from the customer side. What are you doing with your projects? And it's a confirmation. This is a growing trend. The survey was recently repeated by a friend of mine. And again, it was more than 50% on the customer project side than on the internal project side. So what we are talking about here is not a minority topic. It's not a fringe aspect of project management. It's not a marginal thing. This is project management today. Project management today means in a typical scenario, in a majority scenario, we don't have an internal project all happening inside the protective walls of the organizations. Instead, we have a project with 2 or possibly more organizations working together, ideally together, to develop results together. The focus of this workshop is on the contractor side. By the way, I have a similar thing for the customer side, where we also find people insufficiently prepared to do project business, to run projects with lots of contractors, but that's not our topic for today. We are on the contractor side here. And as I just said, we have 3 big goals in here. One goal in a project for a paying customer is we want to make the customer happy, because that's what we are there for. This is what will secure the future of the organization. This is what brings us our justification to do business, because we make customers happy. We have 2 more aspects. One is profitability. I asked companies who do a number of customer projects in parallel, how many unprofitable, loss-bringing projects could you afford for that? And the typical answer was 10%, and sometimes it was less than that. This means when a company has 10 projects and the company has 2 loss bringers, this may already destroy the contractor organization. Destroys profit. But there's another important thing, and that's liquidity. Liquidity is rarely discussed in project management, but it is a very important thing. It's about cash flow. As a contractor, very often you lay out money for the customer. You lay out money, hope to get it back later. What happens if it doesn't come back in time? If it doesn't come back maybe at all? Companies may go bankrupt because they are not profitable, of course. But if you look at insolvencies of companies, you will find it's mostly about liquidity. At the moment, when they can no more pay their bills, their contractors, their employees, their insurances, their taxes, whatever it is, It's the moment when the liquidity is running out, then they go bankrupt. So that's another thing we have to take care of. By the way, in project business, this is not only a topic for project management, this is also a topic for portfolio management, because often liquidity is, again, a topic of the entire portfolio. And I found out most companies who have a majority of customer projects are not aware where they stand in liquidity, matters of liquidity. They have no idea how much money they will need in 1 month's time, maybe in 2 months' time, in 3 months' time. They don't have an overview over the number of projects they are running. In one dimension, one direction, the seller to the customer, to the buyer. But at the same time, they are customers as well, customers for the subcontractors in here. So they share the problems of both sides. I have seen prime contractors who were very successful, extremely profitable. It was a very comfortable situation to take the work of the sellers, give it to the buyer, and just have the hand open and cash in some money for themselves. The difference between what they have to pay to the sellers and what the buyer will pay them. The majority of prime contractors that I see at the moment are in a different situation. Their situation is a very uncomfortable situation. The buyer is putting pressure to reduce the price on the prime contractor, and the subcontractors want more and more. And the margin that the prime contractor can make gets smaller and smaller. At the same time, risks are going up, conflicts are going up, and they have to deal with this all. When we talk about conflicts, another survey I made, I asked companies, if you look at, or project managers in companies, if you look at the causes of conflicts between project contract parties, which do you see as the most frequent ones? And the clear number one was conflict in business interests. Contractors, customers have different business interests, and these often lead to conflicts in here. Two more at the top, diversity of cultures, legal systems, and moral compasses among the parties. It's something I see quite often in international contracts, when the contractor and the customer are in different countries and they have difficulties to understand each other. The differences are too big and people don't understand the other culture, the other legal system, and then incompatible egos. A problem in project management can be egos, big egos, strong egos. When we are in project business, situations are not rare where we have these egos really clashing. We have one strong manager, strong boss on the contractor side, another one on the customer side, and now they are clashing. And actually, this can also lead to conflicts, and it can, in the end, destroy projects. There are many more, as we see here, including, by the way, things like corruption. We heard something about corruption earlier. The bottom one here, the green one at the bottom, bankruptcy and insolvency, is not that frequent, obviously. But my very personal experience is when it happens, it is among the worst things that can happen to you. A contractor going bankrupt during the project, you expect deliverables from the contractor and they won't come. Or the other way around, you are the contractor and you have a customer who goes bankrupt. You need money, you need the money to survive, and the money will not come. So this can be one of the worst things that can happen to you. And by the way, the problems do not really begin at the moment of insolvency. The problems can begin months earlier, when the other party is doing very strange decisions, making very strange decisions, and they have great explanations why they make these decisions, but your interests, the interests of your company, are no more part of these explanations. The next point we have to look at is how life cycles, some people prefer lifespan here, how they are different for a customer and for a contractor. For the customer, the project is, first of all, still an internal project. Whether they do it internally or with a contractor, their lifecycle expectation is the same. I have two examples here. The top one is with a single delivery. That's what you find in literature. Almost all books describe this benefit realization lifecycle. We do a project. At the end of the project, we deliver something, we hand something over, and then someone inside the same organization, probably someone will be able to realize benefits from that. I have another example, which is almost not found in literature, a bit in agile literature, but otherwise not really found in literature. That's the situation with staged deliveries here. Staged deliveries means the product is not delivered in one piece. There are stages, there are partial deliveries done there. And with the first partial delivery, benefit realization can already begin. The full benefit realization will probably be there once the last delivery has been finished. But in both models, the project is our presence and the benefit realization is partially or in full in the future. Now, as contractors, we have a different view on that. A typical customer project, benefit realization for the contractor begins with the first payment from the customer and ends with the last one. At least monetary benefits are then over. We won't get anything out of that. Maybe we deliver some kind of product, a piece of machinery or software also, where we will have some service over time. So we can get some money from service, but that's not more part of the project. That's another department in the organization, another unit that will probably make this business with the customer. The project's benefits are over with the last payment. I have to say it's not always true. I know some types of customer projects where the benefit realization life cycle is different, but these are rather exotic, are rather rare. The majority, I would assume 95%, maybe more, are like this here. So we have a different expectation on benefits from the project, which is part of the different expectations on business and business interests that we have. The next thing we have to look at is, it's not just doing the customer project. In my little example here, we see the customer project in this field between project contract and project contract closeout. This is what we would traditionally say, this is what the project is. But customer projects begin much, much earlier. They often, not always, begin on buyer side. The buyer defines an internal project, and this internal project is at one point in time doing a decision, a make or buy decision. When the customer makes a make decision, then this will obviously become an internal project. When it is a buy decision, when this option is chosen, then it will become a customer project for someone else, a contractor. So the next thing is they try to find their contractor. They go into a phase which I like to call, and others as well, of course, business development. The business needs to be developed. Mostly I see this term used by companies who are in the blue lines down here, seller 1, 2, 3, that they do business development. But actually, the buyer does business development as well, developing the business with the contractor who should do the project for them. So it runs over several steps until in the end there is a contract. And then we can run this as a project. I see some major problems with this model. One problem is often we have different people involved here. Before the contract, on the left-hand side of the contract, what we often see is that this is people from a purchasing department, people from sales sitting together, and a one party wants to sell the project, the other one wants to buy the project, and then at one point come together. Later, when the project is done, it's done by project managers, hopefully on both sides, customer and contractor side. So we have different people involved. There's an old term in project management, over-the-fence project management. Over-the-fence project management means you have different departments doing a project. One department does a phase in the project. When they are finished, they throw the results over the fence to the next department, and they do the next phase, and so on, and so on. There's a statement in some literature, over the fence is history, that we don't have this anymore. If you look at this here, we still have that. The contract is such a fence. We have one department. Each of these parties has one department doing the business development part. We have another department doing the delivery part, contract management, and the yellow bars under that, the yellow arrows under that. And by the way, there is another fence on the right-hand side, project closeout, contract closeout. There is another fence because other people will be responsible there as well. I think we have to break down these fences as well. And there's one more problem that we have in here, and that's the focus of people involved with these different phases. Before we are in the phase to do the project, to deliver, there is a strong focus on competing. This business development phase is often a very competitive phase. We have competition between the different sellers here who submit bids, proposals, quotations, pitches, whatever you like to call it. And we also have competition between the buyer and these sellers. The buyer is interested to get as much product as possible for the smallest amount of money possible, and the seller's interest is, of course, the opposite of that. It's a very competitive situation here, and it very much lives on being competitive. When we have the contract done, and when we go on with competing like that, we will massively damage the project. We will see later a real-life example where there was not enough focus on completing, on acting together, working together. Now we are allies. We need to work together. We have to go the extra mile often for the other part. The seller should be prepared, in my opinion, to go the extra mile for the customer and vice versa, because the idea in the end is to have a great project in here. And competing will destroy, will damage the project much, much more than it will help it. We have a focus on completing. If someone of you is dealing with master students, doctor students, there's a thing that I would find interesting for a thesis or for a dissertations. How well are organizations in changing from competing to completing? This fence is not just a fence between two departments, two business units or so. It is a fence between two cultures, how companies work together, how people work together. And to make things even more difficult, if you have a contractor company which does several projects at a time, they have a portfolio of customer projects. Some of these projects will be in the business development phase, so their focus will probably be on competing. Others are in the delivery phase. Their focus will be on completing. So when you step out of one meeting and go into the next meeting for another project, it may well be you have to change your behavior totally. How good are people in doing that? I'm very skeptical that this works well. And one of the reasons why we have problems in customer projects is the too strong focus on competing. I have some examples here of projects that run into crisis, of companies that run into crisis because they had difficulties to manage all this business. When you look into the internet, when you look at insolvencies or at conflicts happening between contractors and customers. There is a lot out there, and often they have to do with bankruptcies, with financial crisis, and many other things. And there's another problem with these project supply networks. When one of these organizations runs into troubles, it can run other organizations and the project, of course, also into troubles. I have here a crisis with one organization in such a supply network, and it can ignite crisis in the other organizations as well. It's a very dangerous situation. I think project business is high risk business for all parties involved. Back to the view of the contractor. One more problem. We talk about profitability and we talk about liquidity. Let us talk about profitability here. We have a project here where we see payments by the customer. That's this orange line. Whenever the customer makes a payment, it jumps up. The costs are different. The flow of money out of the contractor to subcontractors and other cost items is different to that. And we see in this example, most of the time, the contractor is laying out money for the customer project. In commercial terms, this project is making a loss most of the time until the end. In the end, the last payment turns the loss into a profit. It's a small profit maybe here, maybe 10% or so. I know a lot of companies out there, when they get 10% for their projects, they are happy. They think that this is good, a good margin out of a project. Yeah. So the question is, what happens if we have delays here? What happens if the contractor has cost overruns? The money will come later, the costs go up at the same time. And in my example here, this project, which was planned, was expected to make a margin, make a profit, ends with a loss in here. And that's what happens to organizations out there. We see projects that do not bring in the money that was expected, and we see contractors making loss. All these difficulties that we see here have something at their heart, and that's education. People are not educated for project business management. I talked about the project supply networks, where we find people doing that, managing these networks without sufficient education in that. If you go to BMW, Mercedes, go in America to Ford, go in India to Tata, or wherever you like, or if you're in other industries where they have these supply chains, people managing that are very well educated on all sides. Education is there. We don't have it. If we send people to customers to do the customer project managers who have to make the customer happy, but also have to look at profitability and liquidity, we also find these people are uneducated. The reason is simply there is not much education out there. There are not many trainers doing that. Actually, I know at the moment only one, and that's me. What kind of education do we need for that? We need two areas of education: project management education and business management education. So what we see is a lot of people who have the blue box here. They have business management. They learned business management, maybe studied it, MBAs or so, but they have never learned project management. We have people now who learned project management. They don't have enough knowledge of business management. And my personal impression is most people are uneducated in both areas, but they are expected to do projects for paying customers, to make these customers happy, and to bring money home with these projects. It means that a lot of people, practitioners, learn project business management by trial and error. Trial and error has two difficulties. Trial is expensive and error even more. So this costs organizations a lot of money, And I'm talking about both sides. I'm talking about the customer side and talking about the contractor side, the one that is interesting for us here. I'd like to show you a way to a solution. This way is actually stolen. I stole it from NASA. They had a problem with a probe which they sent to Mars some years ago, 1999, and this was lost on the way to Mars. And NASA did some analysis on this failed project, and the outcome of this analysis is very, very interesting. This is the Mars Climate Orbiter, which was planned to fly to Mars, to go around Mars, have an orbit around Mars, and take up over time atmospheric data from Mars. NASA was obviously the customer in here, and the project was done by the company Lockheed. Lockheed was the prime contractor in this project. They did a lot of work by themselves, but of course they gave some work to subcontractors here as well. But as well, it was the direct contact with NASA. A problem was that there was some miscommunication of thrust data between NASA and Lockheed. The reason behind that is very, very simple. NASA for decades has used metrical units. It was founded by the time by a German who could not work with US customary units, and this tradition is still alive at NASA. Still today, they use metrical units. So when it's about thrust data, Newton seconds. How much Newton thrust do you have, and how long do you have this thrust active? They worked with Lockheed, and for Lockheed, it was very, very clear. We are in America, we are an American company, and we use US customary units. We use pound seconds. I just saw I have the ratio on the wrong slide, but it's 4.4, roughly 4.4 Newton is 1 pound. So the numbers were just wrong. What happened is, on the way to Mars, you have to be very, very fast. When you enter the orbit, you have to slow down the probe, otherwise it will just pass Mars and go into space. So they had to slow it down with a rocket engine, and the thrust data were wrong for the rocket engine. The rocket engine had too much thrust, obviously, and the rocket and the probe just left Mars into open space. No one really knows where it is. Maybe it also crashed on Mars. Could be another option. NASA is not 100% certain about that. They asked, how could that happen? We talk about a project with a total value of several $billion. It's the cost of the probe, obviously, and the entire project, the cost of the project, but the probe was also expected to do scientific analysis on Mars, and these scientific analysis had also a value. So in total, you talk about billions of dollars, and they were just lost because of a very seemingly easy to avoid error in here. What they found is that there was a problem, obviously, with communications. And as a project manager, I think you will agree that it is very important for projects that you have intensive communications in there. Unfortunately, when you talk with other people inside the organization, they will have a different view on that. Very classical thing is lawyers. Your counsel in the organization may tell you different things. Don't communicate too much. All the communication that you send to your contract, to the other contract party, could, in a worst case, be used against you in the end, of course. Don't communicate too much. I speak out of own experience in that I had precisely this experience in the past, that a corporate counsel told me, Oliver, don't communicate so much. Don't send so many emails. Yeah? They can all be used against us later at court. But in a project, we need to do that. So what we need is a lot of trust in the other party that the communication we do will be used for the project and not later against us as court. There are other reasons why communication may suffer. Another reason may be just the cost of communication. It costs time. In the year 1999, it was more expensive than today. Today we have go to meeting, and it's not an expensive thing to have. By the time it was far more expensive. Then, of course, time. How many time are we prepared to invest into this communication? During this time, we cannot do other things for the project. So it's also an investment, and it's an investment of both sides. One thing that I found in some cultures very important is power distance. Am I really free as a contractor to talk openly with my customer? I'm in a country in Germany where this is normal to talk to a customer about problems, about difficulties, and so on. I know cultures where you have to be much more careful with that. Your customer may consider this lack of respect to them. NASA showed that we need to go through a transformation. They had a paradigm used by that time when they lost this probe. And by the way, it was just one of a series of probes. At the end of the 20th century, NASA had really a series of project failures and was in deep troubles from that reason. There was a paradigm called faster, better, cheaper. The faster, better, cheaper paradigm said, in the end, NASA, we want to be like a company. NASA is no company. NASA is a government agency, but they wanted to be like a company, be faster, better, and cheaper. There are different problems with this paradigm. The most important one may be, if you talk with different people, they will consider different goals in here, the top goals. If you talk with a finance guy, he will say, of course, cheaper. Cheaper is the most important thing. Talk with the quality department, and they may say better. Better is important. And as a project manager, you may say, no, faster is important. We have to meet deadlines. So different people may have a different priority in here, and it's very hard to bring them together. And different contract parties also have different interests in here. Cheaper is great for the contractor, depending on the contract, of course. But if you have a fixed price contract, the customer may not be happy with cheaper. They said, we don't want to have 3 priorities. 3 priorities means you have no priority. They replaced this with a new vision, which they called mission success first. Whenever we make decisions, the first question is, what will the option that we are choosing mean for mission success? Will the option support mission success or not? Mission success comes first. They say it is a new NASA culture. It's new methods of managing projects that they developed in here. And another interesting thing is, it's not just about organizations, it's about the people inside the organizations. All individuals should feel ownership and accountability, not only for the own work, but for the success of the entire mission. In a faster, better, cheaper world, people can happily say, yes, the project has failed, but it wasn't my fault. It was the fault of someone else. Now it says here, no, it is our joint success, and it is also our joint failure. When this project fails, we all feel ownership. It's more like in a football team. When the football team loses, all players lose, not just those who got the goals. When it wins, all win together. So they should work together and go maybe this extra mile. And this report at one point says mission success first is the overarching focus of this report. The solution for all these conflicts, for all these difficulties that we have, is to put mission success first. And Clara also says, learning by trial and error or learning by professional qualification, I think I need to learn by qualification. So Clara's employer made a decision to formalize qualification, providing seminars, consulting. I think it's very important when you do customer projects that you have people at the hand who help you, people who you may be able to just call, people who can do things with you like consulting, like coaching. They could be mediators in conflicts and arbitrators in conflicts. And of course, literature is another thing we need. We don't have enough literature here. I know 4 books on the topic. One of them is mine, Project Business Management. I know 3 others. One of the others is just for construction. Robin Hornby's book here, Commercial Project Management, is a good book, and it's not just there for only one industry. So there is something out there, but it's not really much. If you look how much literature we have on internal projects, actually it's almost nothing. Clara learned to build a mission success first approach, build it on the rights of customer and contractor. Both sides need to be respected. Both sides have needs and have wishes and fears and interests, and they all need to be respected. And the cornerstones are good faith, completing over competing. That's so important for these projects, and mutual respect of the other parties' business interests. We talked about the different life cycles in projects, in customer projects and in internal projects, and that's where we start the whole thing. For a customer, the benefit realization life cycle is in the future. For us, it is today as contractors. It is the payments that we get from the customer, at least the monetary benefits. A project may have many more benefits than just monetary benefits. But for monetary benefits, this is true. For other benefits, it may be true as well, by the way. Yeah. So the question is, when we run into problems in a project, can we make use of that? Imagine a project where you have major problems. For instance, with money, you're running out of money. The money that you get from the customer is not enough to pay the costs that you have. Or it may be a problem with deadlines. I made some other research on deadlines some years ago, and 3/4 of projects run against one or more deadlines. So you may have a problem with a deadline that is not achievable. Maybe the customer expects some technology from you, some functionality from you, which you are not able to deliver from whatever reason. We have a problem, we have a potential conflict. What can we do to get out of this conflict situation? The most common one probably is about costs. And I spoke with project managers, I spoke with PMO managers, with managers who do portfolio management in customer projects. And I asked them, if you have a project that is running out of money, what is the first thing you do? And they say, yeah, cost cutting. We need to cut costs somewhere. Yeah? Make something cheaper, leave something out, make it cheaper somewhere. We normally find this under the term of cost engineering. Cost engineering, when you speak with cost engineers, they will say, no, it's much more than that. But the essence of cost engineering is mostly cost cutting, of course. Sometimes it may work well, but often you will find you're cutting costs at a point where it hurts the customer. You may be able to do it somewhere where the customer does not notice it, maybe not notice it immediately, maybe only after 1 or 2 years, but often they notice it immediately. They don't get the quality, they don't get the scope delivered that they actually expected, that they ordered, and for which they are prepared to pay. So cost engineering comes with the risk of conflicts with the customer who is unhappy about what he gets, what they get. And this is not along our 3 big goals where the happy customer stands at the top. Maybe we can try sometimes, not always, sometimes. Another approach, and this is called here benefit engineering. But benefit engineering says, you know so much about the project, you know so much about the customer, you see things that the customer may not be aware of. You look into things that no one has looked into, maybe for years, and you see troubles, you see problems, you see maybe opportunities that no one has made use of so far. You may see difficulties with law. Something is in contradiction with the law, and the customer may not even be aware of that. Yeah? Or you see special risks. And the question is, what can we do to make a benefit for the customer out of that and a benefit for the contractor as well? What can we use this to protect our mission? There's a process for that. The process is quite simple. The process says we want to resolve our own problems, so we have to understand what it really is. Is it time? Is it cost? So bottom left corner, identify the own problems, understand what we really need to change in the project as contractors so that we can have a good project, good for ourselves, but of course also good for the customer. Then we need to understand the needs of the customer. By the way, also, we need to understand their wishes and their wants, risks, problems, and so on. We need to really understand what it is that would make the customer to agree to a proposal that we make, and also what may hinder the customer from doing that. We have to understand the things that speak for us, but also the obstacles in here. We also need to understand our own strengths. If we offer the customer some change to the project, some value-adding change to the project, and we are not able to deliver that, then we haven't achieved anything. So we have to understand our own strengths as well. Maybe we have some people free to do additional work for this customer. If we don't have them, it doesn't make sense to offer additional work for the customer. And we have to analyze our own costs and benefits in here. Then make a proposal out of that, define it, propose it to the customer, and sell it, obviously. So it is here we talk about not just project management, we talk about business acumen now. We know the customer, we understand the customer. We may be able to develop a solution that the customer will like to see. The better we know the customer, the better we will be able to do that. We have been with this customer maybe for months now, sometimes for years. So actually we should know that. And then if the customer accepts that, implement the solution. Some people say, Oliver, that's a dream world that you're describing here. That's not reality. I think it is very much reality. First of all, I noticed that people did that with me in the past, and they made a good job with that. I was happy to accept that. But there's another reason for that, and that's the time we're in. Again, when I say time, it may change. This all may have changed, may be about to change with the Corona crisis. I cannot tell you. So I talk here about a situation, say, some months ago. From that point of time, going back in the past, management was a comparatively easy job. It was all about telling people what to do. It was mostly about directing people what to do. The number of tasks that a manager was expected to do and to be successful with was relatively small. Yeah? The number of competitors was comparatively small, of suppliers, and so on. Today, our world is completely different. Today, we have complex tasks that we did not have like that in the past. Let me give you one example. This guy on the left on the black and white photo, the way he dealt with women, somehow we see him here, would probably be no more possible today. Men by that time didn't have to consider very much how to treat women and how to talk with them and how to show them respect. Today, we all know in the time of Me Too, it has become very, very important. And I think it's good that it has become much more important. But it means you have to be careful what you say. You have to be more careful about your language. Today, we have more competitors. The competitors come out of the entire world, and sometimes they come from different industries. We find a competitor that we did not expect here in the past. We make decisions that may take us for the next 5 or 6 years, when in the past decisions were made for the next 20, 30 years. So a lot has changed in here. And I think the world of benefit engineering for benefit engineering has become much, much easier than in the past, because project managers can help where business managers are overwhelmed with that. The major reason I found why customers give projects to contractors is management attention. Someone should pay attention to something that I am no more able to pay attention. I think management attention is the scarcest resource that we have in business. Management attention is the key resource of all, and it's the scarcest resource that we have. And one aspect to start benefit engineering is to help managers focus their attention on certain things, and we take care for the others. And the interest in doing that is much, much higher today than it was in the past.